Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's time for our digital huddle today. I'm excited because this is going to be a big week, and what an amazing time here at GC. We have in just a week, we have on the 29th water baptism, and then we get into all the fun things of fall with first Wednesday in October and the fall block party at the end of the month, and so many great things coming up in November. Let me just tell you, this is a season you will remember here at GC. It is a good one. So many great things coming up, so many moments being created, and we are talking about the power of moments. Remember the book that I've been talking through during these huddles, The Power of Moments. Today I'm going to talk through a little bit of chapter 3, not all of chapter 3, but a little piece of chapter 3 because it really goes so well with what we talked about last week. Last week we talked about filling some pits and how a lot of times we can take a pit in someone's experience and we could turn it into a peak moment that they end up experiencing. And so many of you came up to me on Sunday and talked to me about finding pits and turning it and creating peaks. And man, I'm proud of you. Thank you for being a part of changing culture that way. And you could do this in your family, you could do this at work. However you see, when you see a pit, when you see something that is negative that's happening, you can turn it to become a peak moment for someone else's experience. We saw last week that even 25%, up to 25% of corporations, and when they look at all their positive feedback, 25% of their positive feedback actually came from an employee responding to something negative. Like the waiter brought out the food and it was cold or it was wrong or whatever it was, and that's a negative experience that could be a pit for that customer. But the waiter then in turn goes like, hey, I'll get you a brand new one and I'll discount this one, and goes and makes the whole experience even better. And what happens is that people go on and they're like, hey, Google 5 stars because this was a great experience, because when this thing happened wrong, they responded really well. And so we saw how you could take a pit and turn it into a peak moment, which is so important. At the exact same time, chapter 3 talks about how we don't want to stay in the pit moment, right? We don't want to just be filling pits, because if we're just filling pits, let's be honest, it's the pits, right? We don't want to just be filling pits and be pretty much on the defensive at all times. We don't want to be people who are constantly going like, oh man, there's a complaint over here, I have to go do that. There's a complaint over here, I have to go do this. There's a complaint over here, I have to go do. I have to constantly be everything that everyone wants and trying to solve all the problems all the time. That's also not a win, right? We can't constantly be filling pits. Instead, we have to actually focus and make our main focus on building peaks, building these powerful moments that people will experience. Now, occasionally when you do see these pits, we need to flip it right into a peak moment. But we need to be focusing and building peaks. That's where our energy needs to be going the majority of the time, is building a peak. But how do you build a peak? The first thing is this. Last week we said we need to think in peak moments. Today we need to talk about building peak moments, and next week we're going to talk about building peaks as well. But there's so many things that really go into building a peak, because as we've said before, it's all done intentionally. It's not done on accident, right? It's done intentionally. And in the book on chapter 3, it talks about how these teachers began to see how during graduation speeches, the students at their school would talk about their sports, and they'd talk about all these different things that they did, but they would never talk about learning in the classroom. That was never like this peak moment that they remembered and they wanted to bring back to their graduation speech. And so some teachers at this school got together and like, how can we make the learning part of their experience a peak moment? How can we make this thing exciting? How can we make it stand out in their memory? And what they did was they decided to create almost like a debate in the subject there at that school. And they would have all the students, they'd like rent an area at the courthouse, and they'd go down there and create almost like a whole courtroom scenario for this debate. And in it, the students would really prepare for this debate, try to really win and compete against each other. They would be given characters to act as. So like one might be like Mark Twain, one might be, Snoop Dogg. Like there'd be these really, really random characters that they would have to act as. And as they're doing this, some were even like Darth Vader, it said in the book. And as they're doing this, they would invite the principals and their friends and the people on their teams, their sports teams, and all these students come to watch this debate. And what had happened was they would put so much work into this one moment, and there would be so much talk and build up into this one moment that it would create a peak moment in the learning process. What they found was that all the years later, now they're like 20 something years into doing this, that every year during the graduation speeches, the number one thing talked about the most is that debate that happens from a learning experience. It's not the sports, it's not the dramas, it's not the band, it's this learning experience that they had with the debate because it was so much fun. It created this peak moment. There's so much build up to it, and it was so exciting. They were able to create a peak moment because they intentionally built a peak moment. This is why this is important. Here's something I want you to remember today. If you own a business, you need to remember this because this will change your business if you can really grasp this concept. If you're an employee somewhere, remember this concept. Like these are important things, but really hold on to this because I want you to remember this in the context of GC as well and being on the dream team as well, because this is so important that we understand this, that we get this right here. Is that when you are reliable, when you are dependable, and when you are competent, those are things that customers expect. They expect you to be reliable, dependable, and competent. Right now, I'm looking for a pest control company to come and be service at my house on a monthly basis. Well, I'm expecting them, right, to be reliable, dependable, and competent. I expect them to understand what they're doing, do it consistently, and be there when I need them, right? Whenever I got spiders, I need you to take the spiders away because you're a pest control company, right? You expect those three things. When people come to the church, they expect us to be reliable, dependable, and competent. There are certain things that people expect. That's what they expect from you at your business. That's what they expect from you, maybe even as a parent, right? My kids expect that from me. But here's the thing. If you want to exceed the expectations, then you have to build a moment. You should already be reliable, dependable, and competent. But if you want to exceed expectations, you have to build moments. So how are we going to build some moments? Well, first we have to think of these moments. We have to expect these moments. We have to be intentional with these moments, right? But how can we look at what we already do and how can we build moments in these places? I think about sometimes the cafe will write little encouraging messages on the coffee cup. That's building a moment, isn't it? When I get my coffee, I'm just expecting to get a coffee. I'm expecting it to be reliable, dependable, and competent. I expect to get a vanilla latte the way that I expect it to be, on time, and it's supposed to be hot at the right temperature every time, right? I'm expecting those things. That meets my expectations. But whenever I have an encouraging message written on the side of the cup, now all of a sudden it exceeds my expectations because a moment was created for me. So where can you create a moment? Here at GC, where can you create a moment? When you are shopping at Publix this week, how can you create a moment for someone? Can you build a moment for somebody else and watch what God will do in your life and in their life? But God's going to use us in mighty ways if we truly look at the world around us and go, how can I build a moment for someone this week? I love you guys. Can't wait to see you this Sunday. It's going to be a great week here at GC.